Okay, in this tutorial what we're going to look at is actually creating a wooden texture for a game asset. So this is the kind of thing we're going to be creating, just sort of a basic look, just to get you into the idea of texturing in Photoshop. So let's get started and close this down. I've already outputted a UV map from Maya, and this is just a simple, the basic UV map from a cube in Maya, and I've just taken this out and brought that into Photoshop. It has a PNG, so it has a transparency on there. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to rename this, double click on the layer, just call it UV, and make a new layer and drag this underneath. So we're going to keep our UV layer on top of everything, and I'm also going to lock this as well. Okay, so what you need to do with this is obviously have reference. So the more reference you have, the better it is for you. So I've just got an idea of a wooden crate in mind, and I'm going to start out with a wooden texture. So let me just open this up. So I already have a wooden texture which I've just got from Google. Just Google Images. Let's just Control C that, copy it. Let's Control V to paste that in. What I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to get this into position. So I'm just going to use a Control T, free transform. I'm going to bring this down. It is a square anyway, so it should go into one of these blocks. Just using Control Alt and plus to zoom in, or we can use the zoom tool. And okay, that should be okay. So one of the things you could do with this, what I wouldn't want to do with this, let me just get this wood texture, is just have this stretched over the entire thing. All the grains go in the same way. The grain may be too big for actually what we've got, and a crate of this size. This crate actually in Maya is about 50 centimeters, so about half a meter by half a meter by half a meter. And the grain may look too large for that kind of thing stretched over the entire thing. So let's just delete that. So what I'm doing is taking individual sections of this and we can place these into the different sections. So a quick way to actually copy a layer, I'm just going to press, so I'm on the move tool, V, press Alt down, and then just move that into a certain position. Press Alt down, drag that out. Okay. Get these down. I'll drag this too far. Move this up and Alt, drag this out. I would spend a lot more time doing this, just for the purpose of this video tutorial. I'm just being quite quick. So we have something like that. Okay. Now with this one, it's important to know from your UV map which parts of this relate to which parts of the actual object. So these are the two sides. This is the front, this is the top, this is the back, and this is the bottom. So what we could do with these is we could actually go in and start naming these appropriately. So we could call this front. It's going to be top, back. Oops. I can spell it properly. Back. This is going to be the bottom. Again, I can't spell. This is going to be, if we're looking at this from the front, this is going to be the right. This is going to be the left, depending on your point of view. And there we go. We have our wooden crate. I can go in and maybe with the top, just go in and actually rotate this round so the grain's a different direction. So I can do a Control T, press Shift to angle snap this and drag this round, then just press Enter. And if we wanted to do the same with the bottom, again Control T, Shift, drag round, press Enter. Then we have that kind of thing. Okay, and that could be our crate. But I want to take that a little further. What I actually want to do is create planks around the edge of this, creating a border to this, and then develop it some more with some other planks. So what I'm going to do for now is just switch these off. I'm going to make a copy of the front just for just for a second. And what I'm going to do with these is just get all of these. I'm going to put these inside a folder in case I do need them. So I'm just going to right click and we're going to do a group from layers. And just let's call this base wood. Just hear my cat in the background. And then essentially we can switch that off. So with this one, what I'm going to do, let's just zoom in on this. I grab my marquee tool up here. And I'm going to, let's just switch that for a second. I'm just going to grab a section of this, however big we need that plank. And I'm going to copy that and I'm just going to paste it, so Control C, Control V. Let me just switch this one off. Okay. Switch my UVs back on. So this is going to be one of our planks. I'm going to Alt drag this and make another copy. Okay. Once more, but this time I'm going to free transform this. Again, just pressing Shift to maintain the angle on that. Let's just move this into position. One more drag. There I have my 4 planks, my border to the entire thing. Okay. Now there's a couple of ways we could leave this, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have essentially a mitre on this, as if there was got a 45-degree angle and then joined together. So we only need to do this, we don't need to do it with all the boards. What I do need to do it with is just really these top 2, the ones on top. So to do this, I'm going to go in, I'm going to choose my Polygonal Lasso tool, L. And just as a side note, you can scroll through any of these tools with Shift and the shortcut. So go through until we get the right one. I'm going to go just to one of the corners of there, and then by pressing Shift down, if I'm going down at an angle, roughly about 45-degree angle, excuse me, press Shift, and then I can lock that in. And then I'm just going to drag out and go back to the beginning, and we get a little circle to say we've got back there. And then what I can do is just press delete, making sure I'm on the right layer, which I'm not at the minute. It's this one here. So delete. Do the same over here, just outside the side. Press Shift down. Press backspace and delete. And press Control D to deselect. And then we can do the same with this bottom one. Get this more in the right place. Okay, backspace, and on this one, and if you need to just zoom in, you can do that. Same thing, backspace. Okay, so I have something like that. I'm going to merge all these layers together. I'm going to deal with them all as one. So if I just grab, so I have these 4. Just grab the top one, Shift click on the bottom one, and then we can either right click and do a merge layers, or I can just do a Control E to merge those layers together. So what we need to do next is add some depth to this. This looks a little flat. I'll just put this back on top. This looks a little flat. We want a bit of embossing on there and shadowing. Now this is kind of an older way of doing this, but it does create a decent effect. And if this was in the background of a map or a level or an environment, it could work. Okay, so just a technique that you could look at. Much more we'd use normal maps nowadays, but for something like this, if it's in the background, it may be overkill, or it may just be a certain style that you're looking for in terms of your design as well. So I'm going to select this. Let's just call this something like border. Get in the habit of naming your layers. And I'm going to go down to the effects panel, and I'm going to do a bevel and emboss. And it probably does roughly what I kind of want it to do anyway, and we may just need to play around with it a little bit. little depth than that. One of the things I probably will do on this is have the light coming from directly above, so about -90 on there. And I want really the size where it is. I want the light shining right over the edge of it. Softness down to nothing. And then just bring up the depth a little bit. So, switches on and off, you see we're just getting a little bit of a depth on that. That wasn't there before. What I'm also going to do with this is add a drop shadow on. So down here we have a list of stuff. We just click on the drop shadow. Then go into this. Again, I've got my light directly from above on this, and with this I don't want to mess about with the distance at all. What I'm going to do is just mess about a little bit with the size of this and the spread, just to get this kind of shadow inside, as if we have this actually sitting on top of the box. Let me just take the opacity down a little bit. Okay, so maybe something like that. Okay. Again, if we were to just do, let's just switch this on and off, you can see that actually we've got a lot more depth on that now. Okay. So, that's our starting point for our border. The next thing we need to do is add a bit of depth and interest to these miter joints. So these are pretty flat. We'd actually have these, they wouldn't be completely perfect like this. So, I'm just going to create a new layer. I'm going to choose just a black brush for now. I'm going to use a line, and with the line I'm just going to have this so we're just using pixels. And there's a couple of ways to do this actually. I'm just going to use a line for now. So pixels, normal, I'm going to set this around a weight of 2 as a starting point. So let's just drag out. So left click drag. Just over the joint itself. I'm not too worried about it going over for now, because I'm actually going to flatten this out a little bit afterwards. So something like that. You can always delete these extra bits. Okay, just something like that. Let me just go in and just kind of grab this area here around this box. Can do a select inverse, so we can do select inverse up here, or shift control I. I'm going to press delete, and that's just going to need to know any extra areas that I had on that. So I need to blur these out a little bit. They're a bit too defined right now, so I'm just going to make a copy of this layer. Switch this off for a second. I'm going to go into filter and add blur. And I'm going to add a Gaussian blur on this. Let's just bring this over. Soften this off a little bit. Okay. And then I'm just going to look at my blend modes for a second. Just get blends in. So blend modes, what we're kind of doing with these is it's merging with the pixel data underneath. So these top set here are keeping the darker pixels and merging with the pixels underneath. So these are the ones we're really looking at for this. If we use these, then actually it's going to get rid of it, because what that's doing is just keeping lighter pixels, and obviously these are all dark pixels in there. So something like a color burner or multiply. So it just, it's not doing too much actually, because it's just a dark line, but I'll put a bit on. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm just going to change the opacity of that down a little bit. I'm also going to switch this original on, so this is the reason I made a copy of this. You can see it's just softening that off, and again if I just blend this down, maybe something like that. Okay, so we just got a bit of a line there, and we could dirty this up a little bit if you wanted to. We could use brushes to actually do that. I'm just going to leave it at that for now. As I said, this is just a basic introduction to this kind of idea of texturing in Photoshop. Okay, what I'm going to do is just merge these down together as well. Let's call this miter. Okay, so what we're going to do next is let's maybe make some planks out of this. So I'm just going to switch these off for a second. Grab this, and I'm going to get another section of this. So just like that. Again, just going to Control C, Control V. Switch off our original. Grab this. And with this, once again, going to do a bevel and emboss on there. Okay, maybe a little bit of a drop shadow on there as well. I'm going to bring the depth down a little bit on this. Let's just have a look, maybe a little more. Let's just look at the drop shadow. I'm just going to bring the spread in a little bit and maybe take the darkness up a little bit. Okay. See what this looks like. Okay. Something like that. So with this, I'm going to make a copy of this. I can alt drag it. Let's just this time alt drag. 3 planks actually should be enough. So switch this off. Actually, I'll leave that on for now. Let's just take those, and I'm going to make a copy of this as well, so we've got that underneath bit. And I'm going to flatten these down as well. So I'm going to flatten, by flattening them down, what I'm actually doing is flattening all of this layer effect information down as well. So let's just grab those 4, which are the 3 planks I've just made, and the background as well. And I'm just going to Control E those, which just gives us that entire thing. Now if I put the border on, what I can do is I can just move this around a little bit, and we can always delete. What I might even do is just scale these down a little bit as well. So maybe just creating something like that. It all depends on what you're trying to go for, the look you're trying to go for, but just to give it a bit more of an interest on there. Okay. Call this planks. Switch our mitre back on. Okay. So we're getting something like that. Okay. So let's grab these 3. So our mitre, our border, and our planks. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to create a group from that as well. So group from let's just have create side. So with this, actually what I'll do, let's just undo that. Again, what I'm going to do with this, I'm just going to, because we've got drop shadows on the side of this that maybe I don't want when I actually have this copied out because of the bevel effect that I had on it earlier. And actually what I may want to do is go in and flatten this down as well, so we're not worrying about how the layer effect affects this. If I start rotating this, it can cause problems with the lighting in the bevel and emboss and the drop shadow. So I'm just going to make a new layer underneath this and drag it underneath. So make a new layer and drag it underneath the border. Select these 2, and as I did with the planks, I'm just going to Control E this, just to flatten that down. So we're flattening all the information down into itself. Okay. This is a destructive method, so I wouldn't be able to go back and mess about with that. Generally, what I would do is actually make a copy of that, so I could always go back to it if I needed to amend it. But just for this, I'm just flattening that down. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to select around, and actually one way that I can do this, because I want to get this square essentially, I can do this from the original that we have, the front copy. So one way to do this, to actually get the selection based around something that's in a layer with transparency around it, is to press Control and get this little marquee button, click on the layer, and that creates a marquee selection around what's contained in the layer. So I've used that front layer. If I'd use this one, because it's got the drop shadow, you see it's around the whole thing and a little bit wider over that. I just want this area. So just Control click on that, and we want to get the inverse of this. So again, I can do a select inverse, or I can do a Control Shift I, and then I'm going to press delete. So it's going to get rid of any drop shadow that may have been round the side of there. Okay. So now I can create a copy of this, and what I'm going to do is just start dragging this into position as we need it. So just using Alt drag again to position this as I did before. Let's get this one. We could make different versions of this, add a bit more or a bit less uniformity. Well, so let's get something like that. Let's just switch this off for a second. Okay, just so we're getting something like that. Just going to make sure that these, which one was that one? Trying to find the other side. Is that one? That one. Just trying to make sure that it goes over the lines on this. There we go. That one. So we've got no gaps in our vinyl mesh. There we go. Just something like that. And again, just switch this off just to sort of see. If you do have gaps on this, one of the things that we can do with this is we could actually do fill. So I've made a new layer and just put a black fill in there. And then if we don't want to see those gaps as white gaps, we can do that. I'm going to leave that as it is for now. You just get a little bit of white there, and actually as a highlight, if we had light shining on the edge of that, if it was a slight chamfer on that, then you would get a little bit of a highlight on there as well. So I'll leave that for now. So there we have our crate. Okay, a bit more interesting. And again, what I may do with this, I should actually name these. That one doesn't seem to do anything, so actually I'm going to grab that and delete it. So this is our front. I think this was the, I think I did that as a right side before. And that. This is the top. Again, that seems to be nothing. This is going to be the back. And so this is the bottom. Okay. Okay, so that's done. The problem with it at the minute is it looks a little bit clean, a little bit neat and tidy, as if it's just come from the factory. It's like an IKEA crate. So I need to add a bit of dirt and grime to this. So I'm just going to open up again. This is just from a Google search. Let's just have a look. I can't remember which one I was using. Yeah, let's try that. So I'm going to grab this. It doesn't matter if it's not a color image. Sorry, it doesn't matter if it is a color image actually. Sometimes what I may do is actually go in and just in the image adjustments, just do a desaturate on this. I'm just going to do a Control A again, Control C, and go to my crate, Control V. Okay. This is quite a bit bigger, so what we can do is just go Control T, bring this down again, just depending on what you want. Bring it down in scale a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to use blend modes on this again, so just going over. So what I want is, I want to keep again the darker areas and see through the lighter areas. So I'm really looking at some of these options up here. So if you go to maybe something like a color burn, or again something like a multiply. Actually I quite like the multiply on that, so let's just zoom in. So what this is doing is just giving us a little bit of dirt and grime around there. breaking up the uniformity of this. Okay. And if it's too strong, we can always just fade that out a little bit, just to make it a bit more subtle. But straight away, it's giving a lot more interest in that. It's not looking as clean and tidy. It just gives it a bit more of a story behind it, which is, a lot of the time what you're looking for in a texture is not having it nice and neat and tidy. You do want it looking as if it's actually being used. And obviously, a packing crate gets thrown around quite a bit. So something like that worked quite well. Okay. So let's just call it grime. I do have another one as well. Just before that though, I'm just going to do what I did before and just rotate some of these round. So I'm going to get this top one. I'm going to do a Control T. I'm going to switch this round a little bit. Just need to move this up to position a little bit. Let's maybe take the bottom one as well. Do the same with this. Just transform that round. Oops. Transform that round and just kind of position this. There. Okay. And what we also have, let me just open up, I've got this texture as well. So something like this with the dripping, if we had water dripping down from the top, we may get these kind of stains along the side from the top. So with this one, we do have a bit of a watermark on this. Obviously for the copyright, but I can kind of use this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to desaturate this. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to use levels on this as well. So I'm going to up the contrast on this a little bit. Okay, grab something like that. I'm going to grab that, Control A, Control C. Control V that in there, and let's just free transform this down. So just building up some of the grime on this can really help us. Again, let's just go in and let's just put let's do a multiply again. Useful thing with this, by the way, if you've got this highlighted, we can actually go up and down on this with the arrow keys. I actually quite like what that's doing for me. A bit of soft light on that. Okay. So just got this little bit of detail on the side there. I'm going to use a marquee. So I'm going to delete this where I don't want it. Let's just call this drips. Let's drag these along a little bit and let's just put this somewhere else. And we can always break this up or have different sections of this, but again, just for speed, just to get these. And then if we're doing this with this side as well, let's take a copy of that. Let's just rotate this round. Again, let's just get that in position. Okay, so I have something like that. And you can just keep building up and building up this detail. Let me just take it off this section here. Keep building up and building up this detail. Okay. Now, one thing I haven't done, which I should have done earlier, is create maybe if you had nails on this as well. So let's just go in and show you an example on one. So let's just say take the crate top. I'm going to create a layer underneath this. And all I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to get a brush, just use my brush tool. Going to get just bring the size of this down. In fact, I'm going to use the angle square angle brackets. Just going to pick a colour, so I'm going to have something like a bluey grey. Okay, put this down a bit. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a few nails in there. And again, just to kind of cheat and give these a bit of depth, once more, I'm going to add onto that a bevel and emboss. Okay, maybe a bit of a drop shadow again. Let's have a look at this bevel and emboss. Let's try maybe something like a pillow emboss. Just soften that off a bit, so we get something like that. And then we've also got the nails as well, and I can just copy that over as we need it. Okay, so we can then carry on and create decals for this, create signs for this, stickers, packaged postage stamps, etc., to build up a lot of detail on there. But as a basic thing, that's just a way that you can go in and create quite a quick texture just using some simple techniques in Photoshop and some simple textures you can find online. And that's the end of this tutorial.